Hello, and welcome to our online training on collaborative leadership. My name is Hector Campos, and I'm a project director and trainer for CARDIA. On behalf of the California Primary Care Association and CARDIA, my colleague Sandy Rice and I are pleased that you have selected this module to support your professional development. CARDIA is a nonprofit, mission-driven organization with a principal team of committed and passionate staff. We've dedicated our careers to helping health and human service providers offer their best to the patients they serve. You may be aware that CPCA is offering this training as part of its patient-centered health home recognition program. This initiative is designed to support member clinics' efforts to move toward and achieve National Committee for Quality Assurance recognition. Before you begin this module, we encourage you to download the associated handouts on CPCA's website. In addition, we recommend that you do the sessions with a colleague to maximize use of the tools that we'll share, and it'll be much more fun. To successfully build and sustain new models of service delivery such as patient-centered health homes, we must inspire commitment to transformation and engage leaders at all levels in our organizations. In this 60-minute session, you will have an opportunity to reflect on a variety of leadership styles and how these styles impact your work with teams and community partners. In addition, you will strengthen your understanding of how to use collaborative leadership to inspire your staff's commitment to their work, facilitate problem solving and action, create inclusive processes, and maintain your team's momentum through challenging times. Several times during the session, we will ask you to pause the recording and tell you which handout to use.
What is leadership? Before we show you the definitions we've chosen, think about it for yourself for a moment. What do you think of when you hear the word? There are many definitions of leadership. We've chosen these two, one describing leadership as a trait, the other as a process. Note the overlap. Both talk about influence, and both are about change or goals. We're going to be talking about leadership as both a trait and a process. As we move into our discussion on leadership, we want to point out that we have many choices about the way we do our work, even if there is not a choice about the work itself. We also each have our own innate or perhaps learned style. But again, we have choices about how we exercise that style and about developing aspects of other styles. First, we're going to look at some different leadership styles. Each of these, autocratic, managerial, democratic, and collaborative, presents opportunities and challenges. Let's look at each style in more depth. What or who comes to mind when you think of an autocratic leader?
Autocratic leaders want to do it all themselves. They have all the power, make all the decisions, and don't often tell anyone else about what they're doing. If you work for an autocratic leader, your job is usually to do what you're told. It's important for an autocratic leader to maintain his authority. What are some ways he does this? He might use rewards and punishment, his position, or even force, intimidation, or threats. Autocratic leaders generally don't solicit input and ideas from a range of people. This means that initiative, new ideas, creativity, and both personal and team development are probably not encouraged. The climate they create may be fearful and not have a lot of trust. The focus is probably less on relationships and more on chain of command. Communication tends to go in only one direction, up, and that can result in an environment where rumors are rife. When people don't have information, they make it up. This is not to say that autocratic leaders are bad people. There are many decent autocratic leaders, and they can provide a stable and secure environment and decisive, effective leadership. People do tend to know where they stand and what is expected of them. This type of leadership allows quick decision-making and eliminates arguments over how and why things get done.
Hector, on the whole, what you've described so far paints a pretty bleak picture. Are there any advantages to this kind of leadership?
Absolutely. In fact, many autocratic leaders are not hated and feared, but rather esteemed and even loved. It depends on their own personalities. Like anyone else, they can be nice people, or highly charismatic, or even willing to listen to and act on others' ideas. It also depends on the organization itself. For example, in the military, most soldiers want someone firmly in charge. It depends on the quality of the leader's decisions and on the needs of the people they lead. Let's move on to the next leadership style.
The leader who sees herself as a manager is concerned primarily with the running of the organization. Where it's going is not at issue, as long as it gets there in good shape. She may pay attention to relationships with and among staff members, but only in the service of keeping things running smoothly. Depending on the nature and stability of the organization, her main focus may be on funding, on strengthening the organization's systems and infrastructure, such as policies, positions, equipment, or on making sure day-to-day operations go well, including making sure that everyone is doing what they are supposed to. A managerial leader will generally be on top of what's happening in the organization. Depending on the size of the organization and her management level, she'll have control of the budget, know the policies and procedures manual inside out, be aware of who's doing his job efficiently and who's not, and deal with issues quickly and firmly as they come up. What she won't do is steer the organization. Vision isn't her business. Maintaining the organization is.
So it sounds like this kind of manager is pretty easy to work for. Is that right?
Somewhat. On the one hand, a well-managed organization is usually a reasonably pleasant place to work. Staff members know what's expected of them, and they're confident they'll get paid. As long as oversight is relatively civil, things are done efficiently and effectively. Good managers even try to foster friendly relationships with and among staff because they make the organization work better. On the other hand, good management without a clear vision creates an organization with no sense of purpose, and that can be a problem. The organization may simply keep doing what it has always done in order to keep things running smoothly. That attitude doesn't foster passion in staff members, and it doesn't take account of the changing needs of the target population or the community. The organization may do what it does efficiently and well, but what it does may not be what it should be doing. Obviously, all leaders have to manage some of the time, but the issue here is the style that person adopts as a leader. If management continuously trumps leadership, she'll have a very different slant on leadership than if her style is essentially democratic, for instance.
Which leads us to the next style. A democratic leader understands that there is no organization without its people. He looks at his and others' positions in terms of responsibilities rather than status, and often pulls others in on decision-making. While he values and takes into account others' opinions, he sees the ultimate responsibility for decision-making as his own. He accepts that authority also means the buck stops with him. Although he sees the organization as a cooperative venture, he knows that he ultimately has to face the consequences of his decisions alone. Democratic leaders involve staff members and others not only in decision-making, but in shaping the organization's vision. They allow everyone to express opinions about how things should be done and where the organization should go. By bringing in everyone's ideas, it enriches the organization's possibilities. But it still leaves the final decisions about what to do with those ideas in the hands of a single person. Also, democratic leadership, with its emphasis on equal status, can encourage friendships and good relationships throughout the organization. It helps people feel valued when their opinions are solicited, and even more so if those opinions are incorporated into a final decision or policy.
This is sounding pretty good to me, Hector. Is there a downside?
Sometimes what happens is that everyone is asked for ideas or opinions, then not all of those are used. And if that's not communicated properly, that can have a negative impact, and staff don't have a sense of ownership. The result is democratic leadership may have some of the drawbacks of autocratic leadership. A lack of buy-in without the advantages of quick and clear decision-making that comes with the elimination of consultation. This leads us to the fourth and last style.
A collaborative leader tries to involve everyone in the organization in leadership. She is truly first among equals in that she may initiate discussion, pinpoint problems or issues that need to be addressed, and keep track of the organization as a whole, rather than of one particular job. But decisions are made through a collaborative process of discussion and some form of either majority or consensus agreement. Toward that end, a collaborative leader tries to foster trust and teamwork among the staff as a whole. A collaborative leader has to let go of the need for control or power or status if she is to be effective. Her goal is to foster the collaborative process and to give power to the group to control the vision and the workings of the organization. She has to trust that if people have all the relevant information, they'll make good decisions. So she must make sure that they have that information and provide the facilitation that assures those good decisions. Collaborative leaders also generally foster close relationships among staff members, making for more communication and cross-fertilization in their work, and leading to more effective ways to accomplish the organization's goals. On the downside, management can be neglected in favor of building a collaborative organization, as we see in this cartoon. Even more to the point, collaborative decision-making can be excruciating. Depending upon the group, ideas can be talked to death, and insignificant disagreements about insignificant areas of policy can take hours to resolve. Collaborative decision-making can be democratic, based on a majority vote after discussion, or through arriving at consensus, with a range of possibilities in between.
I get how this could be great for staff, but it seems pretty hard for a leader to let go of that much control.
That's an excellent point, and that's why we're going to spend quite a bit of time focusing on this style.
Why are we looking at geese? Here are a few things you may or may not know about geese. As each bird flaps its wings, it creates uplift for the bird following. By flying in a V formation, the whole flock adds 71% greater flying range than if one bird flew alone. Whenever a goose falls out of formation, it suddenly feels the drag and resistance of trying to fly alone and quickly gets back into formation to take advantage of the lifting power of the bird immediately in front. When the lead goose gets tired, it rotates back into the formation and another goose flies at the point position. This is all a lot like collaborative leadership, isn't it? It also may help to understand collaborative leadership by contrasting it with more traditional styles. Look at the list on the left. Decisions are made by a few people at the top, with little to no input from others, and a focus on winning. The list on the right, by contrast, shows a style that's inclusive and open, with a focus on relationships and the big picture. The list continues, and again, the list on the left shows an approach that is more black and white, with perhaps clear roles, but more dependence on the leader, while the list on the right illustrates a more complex dynamic.
In a book called Collaborative Leadership, How Citizens and Civic Leaders Can Make a Difference, the authors David Crislip and Carl E. Larson identify 4 characteristics of the collaborative leader. The collaborative leader inspires commitment and action by helping people develop the vision and passion to start and maintain the work. The collaborative leader facilitates problem solving by modeling and teaching a process, and by helping others bring their experience and ideas to bear.
The collaborative leader invites everyone concerned into an inclusive process. Reaching goals may take a long time. The collaborative leader makes sure people stay hopeful and continue to participate in a couple of ways. They help the group set short-term goals so it can see progress, and by example and in other ways, helps to maintain the passion and commitment to keep going when there's no end in sight.
One example for this last characteristic comes to mind. We've done a lot of work with clinics around improving their services and their systems. Often the clinics we've worked with started with something simple and small and non-threatening. So instead of, for example, changing their entire appointment system, they might start with making improvements to the clinic reception area with a new coat of paint. That's something concrete that staff can be part of, and they get to see change as something positive, making it easier to move on to more challenging changes. Now let's take a look at the qualities of collaborative leaders. Before we share what Madeline Carter described as qualities of effective leaders, take a look at this list. How would you complete each of these? Willing to do what? Eager and optimistic about? Able to share what? What do leaders need passion for? Hit pause and take a moment to complete these before moving on. If you have a partner, share your answers with each other.
Welcome back. Madeline Carter, with the Center for Effective Public Policy, has described these qualities. Willing to take risks. Great leaders are dissatisfied with the status quo and business as usual. They are willing to take risks that hold the promise of positive change. They encourage team members to seek out new solutions, to consider alternatives to the norm, and to embrace the potential of change. As management consultant Tim McMahon says, yes, risk-taking is inherently failure-prone. Otherwise, it would be called sure-thing taking. Great leaders are not afraid to take risks. They understand that the benefits of success outweigh the setbacks that may be encountered along the way. Great leaders are open to all viewpoints. They do not dismiss new ideas as far-fetched, random, or uninformed. They seek input of all kinds from all places. It shapes their thinking, and they expect that it will have a similar impact on others. Often, one of the most visible characteristics of great leaders is their passion for their cause, whatever that may be.
Great leaders are effective, at least in part, because of their attitude. They believe in the possible. They're not stuck in today's barriers or yesterday's failures. They're motivated by them, and they encourage the same attitude in those around them. Effective leaders are not all about themselves and getting individual recognition for their work. Instead, they acknowledge the achievements of others and emphasize the success of the group over the success of specific individuals. So again, here are the 5 qualities of collaborative leaders. This quote says it all. Let's try a scenario. How do you think a collaborative leader would handle this situation? You are the clinic manager and have 4 clinicians working each day. Each clinician is trained to see a variety of patients. Each clinician has 2 exam rooms and 1 medical assistant. Clients are uniformly scheduled with each clinician, yet 2 of the clinicians are able to move patients through the visit at a faster pace. This has caused bottlenecks in the waiting room, disgruntled patients at the front desk, and clinician staff who feel they are carrying a disproportionate load throughout the day. How would a collaborative leader handle this situation? There's no one correct answer, of course, but to get more ideas, let's look at what experts say about practices of collaborative leaders. 6 practices to be exact. What do they do? These practices have been identified by the Turning Point Leadership Development National Excellence Collaborative. In order to learn about these practices, they conducted literature reviews, individual interviews, focus groups, expert panel debates, and they attended leadership development training programs. As we go through these practices, think about how each one might impact your behavior in the scenario we just described.
Assessing the environment is all about understanding the context for change before you act. To do this, you recognize and understand other perspectives, facilitate connections, set priorities, and identify barriers and obstacles. Another practice is to create clarity. This is where you take the time to define shared values. You recognize a cause that's bigger than each of us and help the team to create a shared vision. In order to build trust and safety, leaders must create safe places for developing shared purpose and action. This means you must be trustworthy and make it okay for others to openly express ideas, questions, and raise concerns. This obviously takes excellent communication skills.
Collaborative leaders aren't afraid to share power and influence. You do this by encouraging participants in the decision-making process to fully contribute. You help the team members to harness their energies on a shared goal, and this generates power for all. It doesn't diminish your own power. This type of leader is committed to developing people and to bringing out the best in others. You realize people are our key asset. So you spend time coaching and mentoring to help others recognize their own power, which then increases leadership capacity for the whole group. You maximize the use of other people's talents and resources, which benefits the entire group. And finally, they practice self-reflection, which is at the heart of all the other practices. Self-reflection is internal, while the others are external. You use this self-reflection to practice personal CQI, continuous quality improvement, for personal development and learning. So, after hearing about the qualities and the practices of collaborative leaders, to what extent are you already a collaborative leader? Where are you on this continuum?
This would be a good time to pause the recording and take a moment to write down 1 or 2 or more qualities that you already have, or practices that are part of your routine. You can use the handout Qualities and Practices of Collaborative Leaders. Also, make notes about some that you'd like to develop. The beauty of collaborative leadership being so challenging is that none of us will ever perfect it. There will always be room for growth. If you're watching this with a colleague, share your thoughts with one another, especially about the qualities and practices you'd like to develop. Saying it out loud to someone else strengthens our commitment. Welcome back. We want to spend a little time exploring the final practice listed, self-reflection, because it's at the heart of collaborative leadership. It is woven through all other practices. Self-reflection helps you to know more about who you are, what you believe, and how that impacts your work relationships. Interviews with successful collaborative leaders shows that it's one of the most important practices, underlying all other skills. Collaborative leaders use self-reflection to really think about their own values and how these values impact their behavior, as well as whether their behaviors are congruent with their values. They pay attention to communication with their team, both verbal and nonverbal. They think critically about the impact their actions and words have on the group's progress towards achieving its goals. Great collaborative leaders have the ability to recognize the impact of their behavior and adjust accordingly. The concept of emotional intelligence fits nicely with this.
What is emotional intelligence? Emotional intelligence, or EQ, is the ability to identify, use, understand, and manage emotions in positive ways to relieve stress, communicate effectively, empathize with others, overcome challenges, and diffuse conflict. Emotional intelligence impacts many different aspects of our daily lives, such as the way we behave and how we interact with others. Emotional intelligence consists of 4 attributes. But first, let's try another scenario. As we walk through these 4 aspects of emotional intelligence, keep this scene in mind and think about how each aspect might impact your behavior. Imagine this. You are the clinic manager for a rural clinic. A large number of Russian and Ukrainian refugees have settled in your community over the last few years, and some of them are beginning to access services in your clinic. These patients have limited English proficiency, and you would like to deliver more culturally and linguistically proficient services to them. However, several of your staff have real concerns about serving this new patient population. They truly believe that your clinic is just not the best place for them to receive services. How would each of these aspects of emotional intelligence impact how you handle this situation? The first 2 are about self. Self-awareness. You recognize your own emotions and how they affect your thoughts and behavior. You know your strengths and weaknesses and have self-confidence. Self-management. You're able to control impulsive feelings and behaviors, manage your emotions in healthy ways, take initiative, follow through on commitments, and adapt to changing circumstances.
The last 2 are part of social competence, social awareness. You can understand the emotions, needs, and concerns of other people. Pick up on emotional cues, feel comfortable socially, and recognize the power dynamics in a group or organization. Relationship management. You know how to develop and maintain good relationships, communicate clearly, inspire and influence others, work well in a team, and manage conflict. So go back to our scenario. Did seeing the situation through the lens of emotional intelligence impact your thinking about this? Again, no one correct answer. But by using the practices of collaborative leadership and paying attention to your own thoughts and feelings, as well as listening respectfully to the concerns of others, you would move forward with more information, clear goals, and have your team on board.
Here's a chance for another check-in. Where are you on the emotional intelligence continuum? Emotional intelligence and self-reflection clearly require a lot of skills. So what are some tools we can use to develop these skills? Here are a few tools that can be useful in developing the skills that support self-reflection and emotional intelligence. Which of these do you already practice? Which of these could you practice more, or even just learn more about? On the handout, Building Self-Reflection Skills, we give you a chance to answer those 2 questions. Hit pause and give some thought to these questions. Share your answers with your colleague if you're doing this with someone else. One tool is simply getting into the practice of asking ourselves questions and honestly answering them. Here are some examples of questions you might ask yourself. In reflecting on these questions and many others, you can learn about your own preferences and strengths, as well as dislikes, and areas that you can either work on or find someone else who does have this strength. When you think about culture, be sure to look at culture broadly, to include age, gender, sexual orientation, race, ethnicity, spirituality, marital status, etc. Pause the recording again, and this time, complete the self-reflection, self-assessment.
We're going to attempt to pull a lot of this together, and we thought this model would be a useful way to do that. This is a model we use a lot. It's very helpful in planning for changes, as well as for diagnosing what's going on when a change isn't going so well. The idea is that we need all 5 elements: vision, incentives, skills, resources, and a plan in order to effectively innovate or lead. Remember this slide? We're going to look at each of these 5 elements, as well as the qualities of a collaborative leader, by examining a story that most of us know well, The Wizard of Oz. We'll see an example of effective leadership resulting in great teamwork and successful accomplishment of their goals.
There's no place like home. Dorothy had a clear vision, and she communicated it eloquently to her team. As nonprofit leaders, we can't always involve every staff member in developing the vision and mission of our organizations, but we can and must be able to express and explain the vision in such a way that our team members will support it. Vision is also about goals, and we certainly can involve staff in setting goals. Dorothy also demonstrated the collaborative leader's quality of being willing to take risks, and she showed passion for the cause.
Incentives. Each member of the team had a reason for going to Oz. The Tin Men wanted a heart. The Scarecrow, a brain. The Lion, courage. And Dorothy wanted to find her way home. Having their own individual motivation didn't get in the way of the team's mission. In fact, each one's clarity about what was in it for them increased their commitment to the mission. Good leaders help their people find their own personal motivation to get the job done. We can't motivate someone else, but we can help them find their own reasons to be committed to the shared mission. How do we do that? By being eager listeners and asking people questions about what motivates them.
We tend to focus on what was missing in each of Dorothy's team, what they lacked, instead of on their skills. But each team member had a talent that they offered and that contributed to their success. And in fact, each one's talent was the very thing that he thought he lacked. The Tin Man, who supposedly lacked a heart, showed compassion and worried about others so much his tears caused him to rust. The Scarecrow used his brain to trick the apple trees into giving up their apples, and he was the one who came up with the plan to get into the witch's castle. The Cowardly Lion had the most courage of all, because he was afraid, and still went after the witch. Good leaders help their team members find their strengths, and help them develop them through encouragement, positive and constructive feedback, making sure they have opportunities for training, and sometimes simply by being an example. This helps leaders share knowledge, power, and credit, which benefits the entire team and their work together.
Of course, Dorothy's team could not have succeeded without some key resources. That bucket of water played a pretty key role. Remember? As leaders of nonprofits, resources are often a challenge. But when we make the effort and get creative and find the resources that our staff need, they're all the more appreciative of our efforts. Making sure they have the resources they need is the most concrete form of support we can provide our teams. We don't have to have all the answers. but it's essential that we're positive about the future and optimistic that we can achieve our goals even when resources are tight.
Dorothy's plan was really simple. Go to Oz, ask the wizard how to get home, do what the wizard said, no matter how crazy. Like Dorothy, we need to have a plan with clearly defined activities, and we also need to be willing to take risks. As with vision, we also need to be able to describe the plan to others. Of course, it's best if we don't create the plan ourselves, but fully engage our team members in the development of the plan. This brings us to the end of our session on collaborative leadership. Fortunately, collaborative leadership isn't magical. It isn't something that only some people are born with. It does require a wide range of skills, most important of which, as we've discussed, is honest self-reflection. We wish you the best as you continue your ongoing growth in this very important and achievable quest. Here's another quote we like. And these are the references that we drew from. Thank you for your time.